Turn off your phones.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying it. 'Cause
Tell me when you got it.
Turn off your phones.
oh, thank you. Thank you for saying it. 'Cause
All right,
Tell me when
everybody,
you got
we're
it.
live. That was just a little bit back behind the screen, the screen things, but let's go ahead and go live and we'll. Good evening. Welcome to Nurturing Our Roots. This is Antoinette Hill, and I would like to introduce my relative, my cousin, my co-host, Karen Harper Royal. It's always a pleasure being in her company, but more or less tonight, we're excited tonight, like every other day, that we talk about our family history, our journeys in search of our family history. It's just exciting. So we have a very special guest that will be joining us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Karen, and let her introduce our very special guest. Hi, cousin. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing fine. I'm excited for tonight to have someone that we've both been on a very long time and have been out here in this movement for a long time, telling our stories, digging, researching, educating, liberating, building. I'm excited.
Well, happy Women's History Month and happy International Women's History Month. And welcome to our guest, Kathe Hambrick.
hello there, sisters.
Hi. Well, Kathe, I am so excited to have you on. I have been hearing about you for many, many years, long before we ever met. I heard about this lady who was setting up this museum in Donaldsonville, and I even stepped foot in the museum when it was at Tuskegee. Many, many years ago, though I never met you then. But welcome, Kathe, to Nurturing Our Roots. We're so excited to have you for a Women's History Month, because you are certainly a woman who has made history.
Yes, we make history each day that we live, all of us.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about some of the things that you have been doing in your long journey with preserving history, uplifting our history, and now as you move forward, making sure that that lives on into the future.
Thank you again for having me.
So Kathe, why don't we begin by you telling us about some of your how you got started with the River Road African American Museum.
Well, I started the museum. Actually, our 28th year anniversary is this Saturday, March the 12th. You know, what's a generation? 25 years? Is that considered a generation?
Yes.
So, you know, I thought about it the other day. I said, that's a long time. That's a long time to try to keep and sustain a nonprofit organization in this state that provides so little, sustainable funds for organizations like ours. But thank goodness for good friends like you, and thank goodness for friends all over the state and all of the country who continue to send donations and to just oftentimes send me words of encouragement. And thank you also to our board of directors over the past 28 years who've just been the backbone of letting me take a break. And of course, my family. The family and the love of our families is the key to all of our success. I truly believe that.
And I think even before you ever met me, you probably met my cousin Antoinette.
Yes.
Out here in these African American genealogy streets.
Yes, yes, Antoinette, we probably go back 20 years.
20 years or more. Yeah, about 20 years. Yes.
Yes, because
Been a beautiful journey.
As you were helping the Tangipahoa African American Museum and establishing your relationship with Southeastern University there in Hammond, we were, sisters arm in arm, even though we may be, an hour drive away, we were always connected in spirit.
And they always, and we don't know where our ancestors could have been, where they came from. And it's all interconnected some kind of way, Kathe. So yes, I certainly agree. We're doing this something like the identical same work in the same locations, because I don't even consider that to be a different world. It's the same world,
Yes, yes. We're that old saying that we're, what is that, 6 degrees of separation. When you're in genealogy, you'll find that it may be closer than that. And I think through the work that we're doing here in the next few weeks and what we've done in the past, we've shown people that, but more importantly, we must absolutely figure out how do we get children engaged in the science of genealogy, and how do we pass the torch on to the generation coming behind us to do the work that the three of us are now doing.
Unmute yourself, Antoinette.
I totally agree. Getting the young people involved. Yes.
So when I started the museum at the Texcoco plantation back in 1994, I spent 2 years of doing research. Is this the right thing to do? Why would I want to even be on the property of a plantation? I was one of those people who wanted to say, we might as well tear them all down. Who wants to go on a tour to see that? That is not an entertainment attraction for me at all. And then as I started to think about the history that was being lost, that was not being shared, that was not being taught on those tours, I realized that it was no one else's story to tell. It's our story to tell. And that's when I got the idea in the middle of the night, that I guess the ancestors spoke to me, God spoke to me and said, if you don't do it, no one else will. And so as I started to develop the mission statement for the nonprofit, it was to educate the public about the history and culture of the Africans and they were not African Americans before the Civil War, by no means, but of the Africans who were enslaved in sugarcane plantation country. So the intention was not to tell a romanticized story by any means of a Creole people. It was to acknowledge the Black people, the African people who were enslaved on these sugarcane plantations primarily between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And it was to pay homage to their suffering, and then also to educate the public about their survival and the triumphs of their descendants as we became more and more educated and as freedom came to us.
Yes, and I understand that. And I totally understand that, because like you said, no one else is going to tell our story. It's no one else's responsibility to tell our story. And like the voice said, if you don't do it, it will not be done. And I think all of us understand that calling, because I feel the same way in the Louisiana, Florida parishes, those 8 parishes right there. If we don't tell the story, it will not be told. From our experience.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes. And I want to say, the work that you and Antoinette it goes beyond just the river parishes. My family is from St. Tammany Parish, from Slidell, in that area between the lake and the Pearl River, all the way through Logtown, Waveland, Long Beach, Mississippi, Lacombe. And there's a tremendous amount of Native American history, indigenous peoples history that's tied to that area that I'm looking forward to exploring more of in the future as I continue to preserve the history and legacy of people who are from this sugarcane plantation region also.
And Kathe, something you said earlier about, just tear it down. I am living in a place where most of the plantations have been destroyed. And so certainly there is not, and there's very little documentation or written documentation on those plantations. And I have to look in so many places just to see if I can find anything outside the courthouse, in some of the universities. The Louisiana State Archives have floors of records, and that's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But yes, I certainly understand. And I feel like this little bit of 10% that I feel like I have contributed is better than what I found it to be 30 years ago when I started researching my family history. There was absolutely nothing. So I wanted to make sure that I left a trail for somebody to come, that's coming after me, whether that be 30 years, 20 years. I just want to make sure I change that narrative right there.
And I think that's what we do. And Karen, certainly that's what you've done. And, we found out that we're cousins and related through your husband on my maternal side of the family. That was through Thibodeau. And
this
and
is
that
amazing.
happened through the Thibodeau massacre. My grandmother was 6 years old when the Thibodeau massacre happened. And she and her sisters ended up leaving and moving to New Orleans, like so many other people did when that happened. And then one of my cousins in California was doing research and happened.
Excuse me, we getting the feedback. Excuse me, 1 minute. We getting the feedback, an echo, because we want to hear. Yeah, we want to hear everything that you're saying, Kathe, because you're educating us. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me now a little better?
Yes, we can hear you. If you would, I hope that your computer is turned down.
Hold on, let's see.
Well, something should be.
You know what something is? It's like something's humming.
Yes, a humming sound.
Hold on, let's see. And I've never heard that sound before either.
It's better.
It's better now?
Well, just speak up a little louder. If we can't get it clear, just speak up louder.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yes, maybe I'll get a little closer to the mic. But yeah, so through that Thibodeau massacre, my grandmother was 6 years old. Karen was on Ancestry.com and her husband, and I had a cousin in California who was researching my matriarchal history. And then all of a sudden I get a ding, bing from Karen who says, Kathe, you're related to my husband. And they started to share with my cousin in California. And so we are so connected to each other that it's just really, really amazing. We need to know and love and protect each other, whether they're your blood relatives or not. We're still all connected by community, and we need to understand that. Our young people need to understand that we're connected by community, whether we're connected by blood or not. And these young people need to understand that they need to protect each other, not kill each other.
Going back on that note, if we think about Big Mama, everybody gathered by Big Mama house on a Sunday, immediate family, extended cousins, neighbors. And so there was this sense of family and community family, and there was less murders and all these other things that have come into our community. We basically have to stop burying love when we bury Big Mama. You see, we have to go back and stand on those lessons that Big Mama taught us about love. And how could so many people who slept at grandmother's house on the floor with blankets and made a pallet and so much love, and we don't see that. So thank you for pointing that out, Karen, because I'm sorry, Kathe, because that's very crucial what you're saying, given how separated we are in this day and time versus 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when families and communities was closer.
Yes, yes, yes. So, back to, what got me started. So I wanted to pay homage to the people who were enslaved at one plantation particularly, because it was the closest to where I live. And that was the Homer's house that was owned by John Burnside and John Preston of South Carolina. And when I realized that sugarcane plantations required the largest workforce of any other plantation system, more than cotton, more than tobacco, more than rice. So in this area where I live, the enslaved people were in a community on one plantation where there might have been 500 people on one plantation working, or as many as 1,000 people owned by one family or one man who owned 10,000 acres or 12,000 acres like John Burnside. So I started to look for the names of those people and found actually their names were shared with me by someone from the Ascension Parish Genealogical Society. And I was so surprised to see so many surnames. And when you visit the museum, you will see the names on the wall, last names of Braxton, Winans even. I said I was going to try to contact Tony Braxton and the Braxton family and the Winan family to let them know that their names are listed as a part of that Homer's house inventory. I then found out that Ashland Bell Helene Plantation, Bocage Plantation, Texcoco, the Bruley, and Linwood and Waterloo, there's about 8 of them that were a part of a dynasty of sugar plantation owners. So if you would look at it as a corporate structure with various divisions where brothers and sisters owned these various properties, and remember that your ancestors were considered property. Valued on the sugarcane plantations, babies sold for $50. Toddlers sold for $100. Young people at the age of puberty sold for about $600 to $900. The average field hand valued in these documents and sold for anywhere from $100 to $2,500, depending on their skills. So if you were a blacksmith or a carpenter or a cooper who was a barrel maker, we see in these records, actually in these records, these are not records we make up. These records are in the diaries and in the courthouse records with the plantation owners' inventories, where it shows how much we were sold for as human beings, babies, adolescents, and elderly people, which contributed to the wealth and economy, not only to the wealth and economy of the state of Louisiana, but our free labor contributed to the wealth and economy of this nation, and the sugar that was produced and sold to make rum was also the major contributor to the wealth of the world. And that's why our museum exists, to pay homage and tribute to those people who provided that free labor and suffered in the condition of enslavement while doing so.
Kathe, while you're there talking about our enslaved ancestors, I know that you've been doing some work with slave cemetery research. I think this might be a good time to bring that up.
Yes, so my family is in the funeral home business. We own a funeral home in Gonzales, Hambrick's Family Mortuary. My father was in the funeral home business starting as a teenager, working for Campbell's Funeral Home in Slidell right out of high school. So my family was also involved in the insurance business. So I oftentimes say that we are the ultimate preservationists. But when you look at obituaries, funeral home obituaries, as you're doing funerals and as we were doing funerals and going into these church cemeteries, I would notice that sometimes the church was next to a property that is now owned by one of the petrochemical companies, or the church was next to a wooded area where I could see off in the distance in the woods beyond the cemetery. Every now and then I could see like a cross, what looked like to me an iron cross off in the woods. And so I started to ask myself and ask the elders at those funerals, do you know what the boundaries of this cemetery is? How old is this cemetery? And astonishingly, people would say to me, oh, this is the second cemetery. The river took the first cemetery when the levee was built. And then the other thing that I noticed as I traveled on the river road was that sometimes you would see a patch of woods in the middle of the sugarcane field. And you've seen it, you know, when you're driving, you go, and I said to myself, all of those acres of sugarcane being farmed, why is there just a patch of woods, just randomly patch of woods in the middle of all these fields? And again, I started to ask the elders and the farmers, what's that patch of woods? And they would say to me, oh, there's a cemetery out there. So I would get permission. And at that time I had a Bronco Jeep. I would get permission to go down the dirt road. And sometimes I would crawl through barbed wire fences, under barbed wire fences. I must have been crazy. I would find myself in the middle of these sugarcane fields, and sure enough, there would be headstones, iron crosses, and many, if they had a headstone, sometimes it would have a birth date written rather than carved professionally, where the date of birth was before the Civil War. And that's what got me started. And then I started to contact the industry, Shell Oil, BASF. I started to contact the community relations managers at the chemical plants to say, do you realize that you own property where there's a slave cemetery? For 20 years, I was basically ignored. And then finally, there was an expansion that was about to take place at the Shell Cemetery next to Texcoco Plantation. And I received a call from an archaeologist who said they found 1,600 graves between two cemeteries, the Bruley and the Monroe. They were doing the archaeology and they wanted me to be a part of the archaeological investigation, the genealogy, and to decide or determine what and how these people should be memorialized. And that was the beginning of a relationship that I now have with industry to make sure that these people are protected on the lands where they were buried, not moved, not removed and reinterred, and that they are memorialized in a way that our community can participate and pay homage to those who provided that wealth for the rest of the world.
All right. Can I go back to something? I want to ask you about the Campbell's funeral home.
Yeah.
You said there was one in Slidell. Now, I heard that there was one in Hammond, Louisiana. Have you ever heard that there was do you know about that one?
I lived in that funeral home upstairs. My brother and I, Uncle William Campbell owned that funeral home, and he married my aunt Mary, who was a Strahan from Slidell. And we lived there for a short time when my dad worked for my Uncle William. And I'll tell you, I must have been maybe 10 years old, as a 10-year-old living upstairs in a funeral home, it was quite frightening for me as a child, but it's a part of our family business. I think it's something that we've inherited, those of us who are in the funeral business as family entrepreneurs. It's a calling, and my brother Daryl is just really, really blessed to continue the legacy of 100 years in the funeral home business, starting with Campbell's Funeral Home in Slidell and Hammond.
In Hammond, yes, because a lot of people that in the earlier time, they talked about Campbell's, but they never said who was the first name, what was the first name. So he lived in Tangipahoa Parish for a minute, right? For a while.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, yes. They lived in Hammond. They lived at the funeral home. My Aunt Mary had a beauty shop at the funeral home. And yes, his wife. So yes, they were William Campbell and Mary Campbell operated that funeral home. Yes.
Thank you for that information, because from my understanding, it was the first Black funeral home that was established in that time, in that period. And then that's when N.A. James, and then Richardson's Funeral Home, and then all the others. So thank you once again, because that helped me to collect the missing pieces of the puzzle.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So you all have some events that's coming up, Karen. I know you have some things that you would like to share on the screen. So let's pull that up and have some discussions around that, if you would, please. Unmute yourself. Karen, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, and Kathe, I'll ask this question while I'm pulling it up. One of our viewers in the chat wanted to know if you had a book or a website. I did link to the website, and if we want, we can pull that up as well. But yes, coming up, we have a workshop. Now, Kathe, I'll let you talk about the workshop.
Well, the workshop is a part of a series of workshops that the Riverboat African American Museum will be doing this year. This is part 2 of a workshop we started in February with Karen as our historian. And Karen will be talking about the Georgetown enslaved people, the enslaved people sold by the Jesuits to Louisiana, who ended up in Ascension Parish. So many of us know that there was a large number of those enslaved people who went to the Maringouin, Iberville Parish area, but Karen has done extensive research, and Karen found out that the president of Southern University, John Sebastian Jones, and one of the presidents of Grambling State University, or Grambling College at that time, was Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones. And they are the descendant of Henrietta Hill and Henry Jones. And she will talk about their coming to Louisiana from Maryland, and how they have played such an important part in the story of genealogy and the legacy of those families.
And that would be Saturday, March the 13th, March the 12th, I'm sorry.
March the 12th from 1 to 2:30. And Karen has the link if you want to register. We right now have about 100 people registered this time. We had 300 people registered last month. So Karen, if there's a way, they can go to the website. They can go to the website.
Can you pull that information up, Karen, where people can stay connected? Let's pull that up. So, and if anybody wants to stay connected, here's some information that'll be helpful.
Sure. Yes, I'll pull that up, and then once you get to the website, you'll be able to register for the workshop.
So Karen, can you also tell everyone a little bit more about what you did last month and what's going to be included this year, so they know some of the other names of the people connected to Georgetown tied to Donaldsonville and Ascension?
Yes, absolutely. So this week we're gonna, in honor of Women's History Month, this woman, Henrietta Hill, has always intrigued me because her family for generations to come has had such a commitment to education and excellence. And to think that Henrietta Hill was a 13-year-old slave girl when her family was brought here to Louisiana. And it wasn't an easy journey for her because she and some of her siblings were separated from their mother, and another sibling went to a different parish. And so the fact that she has descendants who have done so well, I think is a story worth telling. So we're going to talk a little bit about her genealogy and some of the other families that are connected to her. Last month, we talked about the history of Jesuit enslavement. And
could you stop sharing for a minute, please?
Sure. Yeah, we talked about the history as well as the families that were germane to Ascension Parish. And so I shared some of the surnames of the families that married in to all of the different families that came to Ascension. This Saturday, we'll be talking more specifically about the families that married into the Henrietta Hill's family and their descendants. And hopefully that will help people figure out if they have a connection to Henrietta Hill and her descendants. And it's just been really exciting bringing these ancestors from names on a ship manifest or names on an inventory list to life, and understanding that they actually lived a life. They had children, and their children went on to contribute to society. So
and
it's exciting.
And also, as importantly, is that there are people who live in Donaldsonville, up and down the bayou and up and down the river, who are related to these people. And they may not know that there is a slave ship manifest that shows that your ancestors were brought here as the part of that Georgetown transaction to Ascension Parish, to Chatham Plantation, that was owned by Henry Johnson, who became the 5th governor of Louisiana. We are also developing an exhibit at the Episcopal Church of Ascension, which was a church built by Henry Johnson, the plantation owner. And we are creating an exhibit on the enslaved people brought on the slave ship to Ascension Parish. It will be an art exhibit and a history exhibit in the actual church that's only 4 blocks away from the River Road African American Museum in Donaldsonville. Stay connected, because that gathering to see the exhibit opens on June 18th, the day before Juneteenth. And there's the church. And it was built in 1852. And so we will have the names of all of the enslaved people etched into the artwork in the windows. And it's going to be really like nothing else that can be seen anywhere else in the country, in an original space that pays homage to these people.
Kathe, I just want to also point out that church was owned by the person who purchased these ancestors. And go ahead, Antoinette.
I kind of want to really talk about something that Kathe sort of answered a question that was in the back of my mind. Everybody in the community, and it's almost like they're being called out. You call in the descendants of those that was enslaved. And once they started to do their research, they're going to find that they're connected in more than one way. It could be double, triple related to several of those that were sold down to this area, So that's great work, ladies. Congratulations, sisters. That is really groundbreaking work. And I know it's a continuation. I know all through the struggles of with Karen, you have, you have stayed the course. I mean, really, sometimes I hear you talking about meetings that you stayed on to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning discussing genealogy. So I just want to commend both of you all for this work. And may the ancestors smile down on you, both of you, because I know it's a labor of love, it's intense, it is spiritual, it is everything that only those of us that are searching can imagine. It's a spiritual journey. It is being led.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Kathe, there was some other work you've been working on, a digitization project. What's that about?
Well, 28 years, as I said in the beginning, is a long time. And what I realized through one of the interns that I had a few years ago from the Museum Studies program is that we have about 15,000 artifacts and documents in our collection. And when I started doing this research 28 years ago, there was no internet. There were no cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the research in the old school way, where you had to go to the library, LSU special collections. You had to go to Hill Memorial Library and the Amistad. I had to fly to the Schomburg and to the National Archives. There was no internet. But now, and I really started to focus on this for River Road African American Museum during the COVID season when I was in isolation. And so I developed virtual tours, and we've been looking for grants. And thanks to LSU's library, we're involved in a digitization project where our 1870 and 1890 census records that people had to thumb through the pages for the past 20 years, they will actually be able to go to the museum's website, access these census records for Ascension Parish. I have the names of over 5,000 people who were enslaved between Natchez and New Orleans. And these names have come to me in various ways. Sometimes the family members of the plantation owners would anonymously mail me documents and say, my family owned these people. I'm ashamed of it. I hope that you can use this list to help people who are interested in genealogy. So we have accumulation of about 5,000 names, not to mention all of the names now from the Linwood Plantation, the Bruley Plantation, and the Monroe Plantation, where the slave cemeteries are. So we're going to be digitizing all of those records and all of those names so that you will be able to go to our archives in the same way that you access records at the Amistad and at the Schomburg and see the names of these people.
That's a lot of work.
Digitization, I mean, I even have a midwife's book.
Oh, wow.
There's a family that gave me, Miss Wilson gave me her aunt's midwife's book, and it's a small little tablet, about 5 by 7. And it was in this little box, and it was the records of her aunt, who was a midwife like in 1914.
In Ascension?
In Ascension Parish, yes. Wow. And it's remarkable because to think that they say that our people were illiterate back then, to see the penmanship of this woman who was a midwife riding a horse to go into people's homes in the middle of the night to deliver both Black and white babies. It's just a very, very rare primary source document that is now being digitized by LSU for us. And those names will be accessible to the public.
That is amazing.
That's beautiful.
Congratulations once again. Did you ever run across any photographs of the midwife?
Yes, we have a building in Donaldsonville. The River Road African American Museum preserves buildings. We have 4 buildings. And one of those buildings was the office of Dr. John H. Laurie, who the high school was named after. Now the middle school is named after him. And for about 5 years, I did research on midwives in Ascension Parish. And I have the names of about 6 midwives on both sides of the river, from Prairieville to Lemonville, Modest, in Prairieville, the names of those midwives, and I do have a couple of photos of those midwives. And I even have a bottle of medicine called the wine of Cardew that one of the midwives gave to a mother delivering twins. And so you can learn more about what the wine of Cardew was and why this bottle has these herbs inside of the bottle that she left with a mother in 1906.
Please tell the audience where is the museum located, the hours of operation. Can you pull that up, Karen, or do you need me to go ahead and pull it up?
Oh, no, I can pull it up.
Okay, would you do that?
And Kathe can go on and start talking
Yes.
about coming up.
So the website, you can go to our website and book a tour. It's www.africanamericanmuseum.org. You can just book a tour. We're only doing tours by appointment now as we come out of this COVID season, but we also have a bicycle tour called History on Wheels. We have 10 cruiser bicycles, so you can book it for your family, bring your own bikes, bring your lunch, and then you can visit all of our buildings, including the Freedom Garden and the Rosenwald School that we own and are restoring. So AfricanAmericanMuseum.org, and then you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you'll see all of our programs and how to book a tour there.
Thank you. Okay, Karen, you can stop sharing. I want to just pull up this picture again so that everybody can see what the Rosenwald School looked like over there. Kathe, I don't know how you sleep because you know, looking at all that you're doing, I'm hearing you say it was 28 years, and that's been 28 years of long suffering and accomplishments, legacy building, education, and all that. And I know you're going to take some of this to bed, but here's a look at the Rosenwald.
No, that's not the Rosenwald School. That's building
the museum.
That's our main building, and that was the home of a teacher named Miss Sylvia Watkins. And for those of you who saw the movie The Great Debaters, she was a student at that college in Texas where the great debates took place. Her uncle and her father and her grandfather were doctors and pharmacists in Donaldsonville, and she was a school teacher at the Rosenwald, one of the Rosenwald schools. You can, when you go to our website.
Can you pull it up, Karen? Can you pull up our website? Let me stop sharing. You can pull up the website.
You can, if you go to the website, you'll see a picture of the blue schoolhouse, which is our Rosenwald School. There it is.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And we moved that building across the Mississippi River to save it.
I remember when Lennon and I came out there, and you had just got it not very long before that. And this is amazing. It looks nice. Very, very good.
Yeah. So the building had to be cut in half. It's about 3,200 square feet. The building was cut in half. The roof was taken off, and then it was brought across the bridge in 2 separate pieces, knocked down every mailbox in Vashry, coming back up to Donaldsonville. And, you know, it's been 17 years trying to raise the money to convert this old schoolhouse into a new schoolhouse for our after school program and Saturday programs. We will also have some old school concerts there. So you'll be able to come and listen to the blues and listen to some jazz music inside our listening room that's going to be in the schoolhouse.
That's awesome. Any questions coming from the audience, Karen?
No questions, but a comment. Gold Teeth PhD says, it's a beautiful day when an enslaved ancestor can smile and say, my descendants now know my name.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just share the flyer again about Saturday's workshop, because believe it or not, we will soon be over. um, and folks can sign up at the River Road African American Museum's website to sign up for the Zoom webinar. This is going to be Saturday, March 12th at 1 p.m. from 1 until 2:30 p.m. And we're looking forward to having folks join us as we talk about Miss Henrietta Hill and her descendants, John Sebastian Jones, and Grambling University's president, Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones.
I see you have a Bergeron. My cousins are Bergeron. So they always talked about their father being connected to that area, but I don't know much about their history at all. But it's great to see there's always a connection somewhere, huh?
She is from Opelousas, and she is a genealogist that has just done amazing work on the slave cemetery at BASF. And we're going to be dedicating that cemetery in April with a memorial service. And Regina, you should have her on your show at some point to talk about the genealogy that she discovered from the over 200 people who were enslaved at the Linwood plantation in Ascension Parish.
Wonderful. Kathe, on that note, do you know a woman named Miss Murdis Johnson Womack? Miss Womack?
Miss Murdis,
Yes,
she passed away. Yes, she was a good dear friend. Yeah.
Yes, I was so sad to hear that on yesterday, that she was one that preserved the history of the cemeteries. Matter of fact, she located the enslaved cemetery in St. Helena, and she got markers put on those graves. So let's lift her up in power. And we want to thank the Heavenly Father for the work that Miss Murdis did while she was here. And it's such a loss. If you hear of when the arrangements will be, Kathe, would you please inbox me or email me so that I would like to attend her services?
No, she passed away a few months ago.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was told yesterday that she, okay.
No, I think I have a copy of her obituary. I'll send to you. Her daughter works at Southern University at the Law Center. I will send you a copy of the obituary.
Would you please? Yeah, because he definitely told me it was yesterday, but I was just so sad to hear that, because she did a lot of great work in St. Helena, in that area there. I mean, outstanding work.
Oh, you're saying Miss Murdis Johnson. I'm talking about oh gosh, from Iberville Parish with Revealtown. I think
this is Miss, I think her name Murdis Johnson Womack.
Oh, okay, yes, Miss Murdis, you're absolutely right. She's different, yes, but we did lose another. Oh yes, I'll have to send you the obituary for our other dear friend in Iberville Parish who was working with the Revealtown Cemetery. We lost her 2 months ago.
Okay, well, when I talked to Pastor Cheney with Rocky Hill AME Church in Rocky Hill, Louisiana, he told me yesterday that she had passed.
Miss Dickerson. Is the one is who we lost a couple of months ago from Iberville Parish, who worked on cemeteries there in Iberville and West Baton Rouge.
Kathe, when you first came on, you highlighted the importance of getting the youth involved. That's something that we all must concentrate on, is getting more youth involved in the work that we're doing, so that when our time comes, the work doesn't stop. That's the main concern that all of us have. The work shouldn't stop.
The challenge that I tell my colleagues in the museum business, and this is for all museum professionals, is how do we make history cool? Because, who's going to be the next generation of curators? Who's going to be the next generation of historians? Who's the next generation of genealogists? This is not work that you can do on TikTok. This work takes hours and hours and years of dedication. And We need to search out, and I know they are there because I meet young people all the time at the museum, our volunteers, our staff, my brother, who is now the interim director, Daryl Hambrick at the museum. We meet young people who have an interest. We must provide a place where they can come and learn this science and learn this history. We get so caught up in critical race theory. I hate to bring it up. But we get so caught up in critical race theory, asking other people for permission to teach our history when we need to do better. Because we can teach our history the way we learned it at home and at our community centers and organizations in our community. And why wait for someone else to give us permission to teach our children?
And use the social media platforms, these platforms, whether it's Zoom, Skype, whatever it is that you're using, use that platform to educate.
Yes.
And so that's what we do here with Nurturing Our Roots from Slavery to Freedom. You know, we use this platform as a way to discuss genealogical research, history, local history. And a lot of times what our focus is local history, because when we get people that have an interest in the local history, that's where it all begins at. It begins with grandmother, it begins with grandfather, grandparents, great uncles and uncles. You know, they was involved in the community. I learned something here tonight that was very important. That here it is, I am connected to someone who was the founding family of Campbell's funeral home in Hammond, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you see, we're all connected some kind of way.
And then we teach our children about the civil rights movement when they don't even ask grandma or auntie if they were involved in the civil rights movement.
Exactly.
There were people locally involved in the civil rights movement in your own family that you may not even know participated in the march in Selma or the march in Bogalusa. So our generation, I must say, you know, let's not drop the ball, become involved, support what you are doing there in Tangipahoa Parish, support the River Road African American Museum, support Karen, support us here in Louisiana with the work that we do. You may not be able to make it to Washington, D.C. with your family to see the National African American Museum this year, but there are places right here where you can be connected to the places and the people who made a difference right here in throughout Louisiana.
Wherever we are.
Yeah, wherever we are. Yes.
Wherever we are, you know. Oftentimes we think about traveling to other states, to other countries, or wherever it may be. But how often do we think about just traveling to those places where our ancestors called home, you know, the cemeteries, the local churches, just driving down that dirt road and just let your imagination take you away, you know. I had some relatives that I met 2 years ago and they finally made their trip here. And it was such a beautiful ancestral journey that they was on, and we took it together, you know, going to the cemeteries, going to the clerk's office, looking at, that was the first time that they had ever seen a chattel property, their family members on the inventory of slave records. You know, it was just that moment, you know. It's nothing like taking that journey yourself rather than someone just try to give it to you. No, it doesn't. It's not the same feeling. It's not.
Yeah, it's like getting to know your ancestors for yourself when you make that discovery and seeing them on those primary source documents.
You know, I always tell people they're waiting to meet you. They're waiting. They're there. You know, and it's just a beautiful introduction of, okay, where you want me to go, and listen to that instinct, listen to that voice inside that say, here, go there, you know, make this phone call. You have to listen to the voice. That's all I can say. You know, you have to be there. You have to open up yourselves to receive it, to receive that map that they have left. Our ancestors, we are our ancestors. We are the future. So the spirit of our ancestors didn't die. It's just that, I wouldn't even say the flesh, because the older I get, everybody tell me I look more and more like my mother, the older I get. And you hear that too? So that tells us that they're here. They're here.
And you know that they're talking to us because I'm sure you've had this experience, Kathe. I know Antoinette has, where they'll just like guide you right where you need to be.
And
And
you know what I want to say too? It is empowering. You can only imagine the hundreds, if not thousands, of children who we have seen come through the doors of the River Road African American Museum. And when they walk through the doors, they look and they see all of these faces and all of these names. And you can just see by the time they leave there, they're holding their heads up and they feel a sense of empowerment because we teach them that they are descendants of the survivors and that there is nothing that they are going through today that was not 10, if not 100 times worse for the ancestors that lived before them. And we want to empower young people. We don't want them to feel as if they are victims. We want them to know that they can build institutions like this man behind me, Booker T. Washington, built Tuskegee Institute or Tuskegee University that is still standing. You know, we want to build institutions that teach, and we don't want to rely on other people to build institutions for us and support those institutions more than we support them ourselves.
Thank you for that, because that's so important that we, let me tell you, I just want to share this with you. A couple of weeks ago, a student from Southeastern contacted me, and he said that, Dr. Rell, there's a lot of history missing. There's only a little window. And I thought about my collection at the Amistad and Southeastern. I said that the reason being for that particular collection at Southeastern is because there wasn't any. And speaking about those funeral programs, Kathe, you know how rich that collection is. Richardson's Funeral Home donated over 1,000 and something funeral programs, and we donated them. The East Baton Rouge Parish Library scanned 500 and something, but the rest of them, they're online. So you understand the important information that those funeral programs offer to someone not only looking for genealogical connection, but history. What did they do? You know, who did they live next door to? Who was the friend? What church? What school?
Were they a veteran? Were they a veteran in World War I or World War II? You know, military history. There's so much history. What was their occupation? You know, so much.
And that's how we begin to tell their stories, by extracting them from wherever we can find them, whether it's their funeral program or other newspaper articles. We have to uplift their history.
Yeah.
And in return, we find out that there is so much that was missing about the local history that we can put the pieces together from those funeral programs, like the Butlertown Colored School. It was Collis Temple's mother who was, what they said lately is that she was taught by George Washington Carver. So there's so much Vernontown. There's just so much local history that we have to be busy documenting that history that was intent to be erased. But I feel like because we are doing something that our ancestors couldn't do. They couldn't read, some of them. They couldn't write, they couldn't document. So what are we doing? You see, what are we doing? Like you said, Karen, we got to call their name. We got to write their name. We got to tell their story, because when we tell their story, we're telling our story and preserving and uplifting as we do that.
Absolutely. Kathe, was there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover tonight?
I think that, oh yes, so we have a couple of other events coming up this month as a part of Women's History Month and the museum's 28th year anniversary. So we have—
Congratulations.
28 years, oh my goodness. We have the Genealogy Workshop this Saturday, the 12th. Next week on the 19th and the 20th, we have 2 outdoor movies. On the 19th, we're showing Respect with Jennifer Hudson. You bring your lawn chairs and your refreshments. It's free to the public. And then on the 20th Sunday, we are showing Mahalia, Robin Roberts' movie about Mahalia Jackson. Outdoor movie on the lawn of the Rosenwald School. Just pack your lunch, bring your children, bring your grandmother. It's outside. You can go again to our Facebook page and get the location and the time. And then at the end of the month, we are working on showing 2 interviews that I did with Louisiana icons, women. Chief Justice Burnett Joshua Johnson, who has a genealogical connection to Donaldsonville and Lemonville. I had the pleasure of interviewing her last month. So we're looking to broadcast that interview with her. And then I went to Mexico while working with the West Baton Rouge Museum in Port Allen. Thanks to them, they're sharing from their archives my personal interview with Dr. Gwendolyn Midlow Hall.
Wonderful.
And who also has a connection to Donaldsonville. So we have a couple of events celebrating women. We want to see you at those outdoor movies. They are so much fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else you want to add, Karen, before you close out? You can close us out for tonight.
Well, I'll just share the flyer for Saturday's workshop one last time. We hope that you guys will join us on Saturday, March 12th at 1 p.m. And as we close out for tonight, I want to thank you, Kathe, for joining us on Nurturing Our Roots. And for those of you who in the chat, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe button, and you can leave further comments in the comment section below. And so that you won't miss any of our upcoming shows, hit the notification bell and you will receive a reminder each time we go live. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Good night. And thank you, Kathe, for being a guest. Thank you, Karen.
Good to see you.